This is Heroine Addiction, presented by That Time I Got Reincarnated in the Same World as an Anime Podcaster, where we cover romance and drama manhwa, and where, even if you don't have a soul, you still don't deserve to be enslaved. I'm Isekai Sensei-Sama, aka Brad, and as always, I'm joined by Bento Baggins, aka Matt.
I'm a rare, red-haired homunculus that all the nobles prize for my novelty.
It would be pretty rare. Well, be sure to find us on social media, which you can find links for on our website, animepodcasterreincarnation.com. So, today we are talking about Revolutionary Princess Eve. So, as always, I will read the summary here, and then we'll get into the discussion. Princess Evian-Rose, despite advocating fiercely for the rights of the homunculi rebels, now awaits death at their hands. That is, until she is poisoned by her own sister. Awakening 8 years in the past, Eve now has one goal: become the Empress and liberate the homunculi to stop the rebellion from ever happening. To do this, she appoints the rebel king himself, Michaelis Ignito, as her personal knight. But with Eve's scheming sisters standing in the way, the fight for the crown is on, and the fate of the Hedelamid Empire rests in her hands. So there we have it, Revolutionary Princess Eve. This is a very well-rated series, currently at 9 out of 10.
Wow. How many ratings does it have? Can we see that?
2,328.
I wonder how that number compares with some other series we've read.
I mean, we pretty much only read good stuff, so I do think that's probably on the low side of number of votes.
Because I would imagine, I mean, we'll get into it as we go, but I would imagine this is really popular with probably a subculture.
What subculture would that be?
So I think, have you ever heard of the Omegaverse?
Yeah, I think so.
This isn't like full blown Omegaverse, but Omegaverse is like the alphas and the alphas
that
dominate and like yeah. But this is more of like a little bit more wholesome, I guess, like submissive, dominant relationship where the male is the submissive and the woman is the dominant, and it has imprinting, which is language I think is used in the Omegaverse. And so I think there's like, that is not like a broadly popular genre in romance, but it's popular enough, and the people who like it a lot. And I think the Omegaverse comparison may scare people away because that stuff gets weird. This doesn't get weird. I was afraid it would when it started and they started talking about like, I need to imprint my homunculus. But it doesn't get weird. It is more wholesome.
There's some weird stuff.
Yeah, but the main relationship isn't too weird. I didn't hate the main relationship. I really thought I would. But that's why I kind of wondered, like, oh, is this maybe like a niche thing?
You know, it's funny that you mentioned that because I did actually I have a couple notes from this when I was rereading it, which, you know, most of the time I don't take many notes because I like things to just sort of come out of my head organically. But there was one specific thing that I noticed as I was rereading this, which it really stood out to me a lot. You know how in lots of isekai series, the main character will like get a slave or two and then like, oh, but I'm going to treat them really well and they'll fall in love with me. And then, so it's not that, I'm their master and they have to have sex with me, but they'll fall in love with me for real and then they'll want to. And that's, for some reason, this weird isekai trope, right?
For some reason. Like, I can't imagine why a bunch of teenage boys would fantasize about.
You joke about that, but why isn't the trope just I get slaves and then I get to have sex with them? Why does
Because
it
people
have to
want
have,
to be liked. I don't think
well,
anybody wants. I mean, like. There's an element of like, yeah, if okay, that like the isekai trope is problematic, but like if it goes to like a sadistic place, then it's like,
yeah.
get that kid some help.
Anyway, so I'm reading this and I'm like, this is that trope, but it's on the ladies' side instead.
A little bit, yeah. When it started. So at the very beginning, we're talking about philosopher's stones, alchemy, homunculi. The homunculi are created by alchemy, and the royal family is a bunch of like master alchemists, and they create their army of homunculi and dominate the world with it. And that, of course, the series starts where that has all gone bad. The homunculi have finally rebelled, and the royal family is going to be executed. Even maybe Eve, but Eve really isn't going to be executed. Her sister tricks her into thinking she will be, and taking poison to avoid a more gruesome death. First thing I noticed, all of the alchemy looks exactly like it does in Full Metal Alchemist. The Philosopher's Stone is a red stone that looks somewhat malleable. They have the little lightning effects for when alchemy is done that they do in Full Metal Alchemist. And Eve rocks the Elric braid and bangs, and there is no way that's a coincidence. I won't say it's like straight up Full Metal Alchemist fan fiction, but this person loved Full Metal Alchemist.
Okay, but there's also regular magic that's not alchemy.
Yeah, that doesn't make a ton of sense.
Even though there doesn't seem to be a visible difference between the two when anyone uses it.
No, and the alchemy doesn't. I think they do use circles to do alchemy, but I don't know. They're not really like transmuting things.
My thought was what they were going for was that alchemy took a lot of academic precision. So, like you said, drawing circles and like doing calculations and all that stuff. Where I think magic was supposed to be more like fluid and
it's
imaginative.
Is it like the you don't play D&D, but there's like wizards are like studied in magic.
Yeah.
And sorcerers just are innately talented.
Right. And I think the magic system that they were going for here was sort of more on the sorcery side, although it also wasn't strictly innate. They did have to learn it and practice it and get good at it. But yeah, the alchemy side seemed to be more like wizards studying and doing that.
Well, and the one important distinction is that the homunculi can't do alchemy.
Right. But
Like
then they
Full
also
Metal
say
Alchemist.
that humans can't do magic. And so, but then like there's parts where Eve will do things that certainly looks like she's just casting magic.
I think, yeah, I mean, I think she overtly uses magic.
And
Because
at
they
one
have
point,
magical barriers and stuff. Oh, but the homunculus cast that.
yeah. But then also at one point they were talking about like, oh, you can do this particular spell. I'd like to learn that. Oh yeah, I'll teach you. And it's like, it's so inconsistent. Like
The humans can definitely do magic. If they said they couldn't at the beginning, then
it wasn't at the beginning though.
oh,
It was later on. There was like there's like an exposition scene where they were like, yeah, humans can't do magic because that's God's thing, because God created, because they're the creation.
oh, I do remember that line.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I took that to mean like there's a divine creative force that humans don't have access to, and then the humans use alchemy to create the homunculi, so the homunculi don't have access to that. But yeah, it is weird. I don't think you're here for the magic system.
Well, you can't be because it's
Yeah.
inconsistent. Now, maybe it's a translation thing. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe the word magic is being used too many times.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that we are reading the official one, but I did notice there was a couple points here and there where the translation seemed a little suspect.
There's definitely misspellings and some grammar mistakes, and I didn't realize I was reading the official translation. So they might be a little rushed.
I don't know. We don't have enough information, but it was really confusing to me, especially as I was rereading it, because, it's been a while since I read this, but it's a good series, and I had a lot of it still in my mind. And so as I was rereading it and coming across these things, I was like, now wait just a minute here. What exactly is going on? And, I don't care if a series is going to do what's the word for it when your magic system is just all over the place? It's not strict, but
I would say soft and hard magic.
Soft magic, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't mind a soft magic system, but don't pretend that it's a hard magic system and then have it be soft,
Yeah, like you don't write a bunch of rules for what Gandalf can do and then he just does something else. You just
Right.
What can Gandalf do?
Or if that's what you want to do, you need to make sure that your crazy thing that he's going to do does fit in there at its extremities, And then you need to tell us that, because otherwise we're left here, we're sitting here going, I don't know what's going on. She makes a butterfly golem thing at some point that's like supposed to protect them, and it's unclear how it's protecting them. And then later she uses it as a messenger. She like sends it to one of her her lady in waiting or whatever to be like, hey, we're coming over to your house. It's like, what is that thing? What is it doing? Is it a magical ward that's protecting you, or is it a familiar, or what?
Yeah, I'd kind of treated it as a familiar. I was just rolling with it. I wasn't. I never understand the magic in these. It's very like video gamey, without the strict rules and definitions of video game. It just has like the appearance of like RPG magic, but yeah, you're really here for the. You're really here for the imprinted relationship. I really think that's what it is.
I was really on the fence about the relationship stuff here, because on the one hand, they did sort of go out of their way to give you an excuse to be like, oh, is it the imprinting or is this his real feelings? He can't tell.
I thought I was going to dislike this because imprinting is a trope that comes up in a lot of fantasy romance, famously Twilight. And it was an absolute disaster in Twilight. And I don't like it. I'm not big into the submissive dominant relationship structure. So it's not my thing, but the way they set it up So the royal family, they are expected to each choose a personal knight. And they use alchemy to imprint that personal knight. So that personal knight serves them loyally and services them loyally. And it's all the princesses. They all get a hot guy or several hot guys to maybe hang out with them at night in their bedrooms, scantily clad. And our revolutionary Princess Eve, she's different in that she fights for the rights of the homunculus. In her first life, she refuses to take a personal knight because it is against her moral code. But before she dies, in the original timeline, the guy's like, "You should have made me your personal knight," because he has a crush on her. And also, her sister is impregnated with some weird alchemy baby, and we don't know if it's going to be a monster or not. But like, I'm waiting for that to come back around. What a way to start a series and then never mention again.
It was a bit of a letdown that, right before we see her Eve go back in time, we didn't get to see Rosiente or whatever the hell her name is.
I'm going to call her Rosentine.
Get her comeuppance.
She kind of did. I mean, he
Well, McKillis is like, bring her
her
here and we'll cut her open and use her blood for the Philosopher's Stone. But you never see any of that.
Yeah, he didn't endear himself to me in that first chapter. I mean, like, I know she's a bad person, but like, I don't know. There's still a way you got to treat bad people that makes you look like a good person. But so
John Brown would disagree.
Well, that's true. So, well, like, you can kill somebody, like, but torturing somebody is like, I don't know if that's good for you. It might feel like what you need to do, but like, that's bad for the soul.
That's why we need the John Browns, because we need someone to sacrifice their own soul to enact justice in times of injustice.
When are they going to finally make an Otome Isekai featuring like a Punisher type character?
Hey, this isn't over yet. We still have plenty of time.
So in her next life, she's like, okay, so my first life, when I was an annoying sociology major, quietly protesting and like not eating meat, nobody paid attention to me. Everybody hated me.
They all thought I was weird.
Yeah, I didn't get anything done. So this life, I'm going to be a politician, and I'm going to make several moral compromises that'll let me get ahead so that I eventually get the power to do the thing I want to do. And unlike most politicians, she'll probably do that thing then.
This is like if Bernie Sanders had like gotten some military industrial contracts.
Bernie Sanders just needed to imprint on a hot homunculi who could fight a dragon for him.
Hey, have you seen his wife? You don't know that he didn't.
It's true. So she decides she's going to do the thing. She's going to imprint on the king of the homunculi because he said you should pick me. And she's like, what did that mean? So I'm going to pick him. Now,
just an aside real quick. It took her way too long to figure out what the heck he was talking about.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
She's so smart, right? She's so smart. She's so academically gifted. And it took her forever.
Well, I'll give her the pass. I mean, it took her a long time, but like relative to the length of the series so far, which is like 50 chapters. So
yeah, that's true.
That's not too bad.
It also took someone else going, what did he tell you? Say that again. What did he say? He said, choose me. I wonder what that meant. Wink, wink.
Oh, what's that? What's that YouTube channel? Casually Explained,
Yeah.
where he's talking about how to know if a girl's into you. And it's like, okay, so she takes you up to her bedroom, turns the lights off, pulls you into bed, and says, I want you to ravish me. And that's pretty vague. She could just be, a little like tired or something. You still can't really tell if she likes you. So people are weird when it comes to their own the perception of somebody maybe wanting them in that way. I'll give her that. But she goes to him, and this is what makes it okay, I guess.
Okay, here we go.
She goes to him, and he's imprisoned because he has been disobedient in the past. The king failed to extract his oath or whatever. And she's like, I bet there's something wrong with his mana channels, father. Let me go talk to him and I'll imprint upon him. And she goes, and he's in this like Kung Fu Panda prison where like,
why is that?
I don't know why that's the first.
That's the image that you have.
That's the only image I have of like this tower. Where
what was it? The snow leopard guy?
Yeah, where the snow leopard guy is
something
being
like that.
Yeah, and he's in that exact setup. So I was thinking Kung Fu Panda. Maybe they were referencing something less cartoonish, but she tells him the deal.
I think there was something like that in Legend of Korra.
Oh yeah, there was. Yeah, that probably would have been a better. I'm going with Kung Fu Panda though. That's what I thought. That's where my head was at. So
it's been done before.
Yeah. So she tells him like, okay, here's my thing. I want to free the homunculi. I've got a whole plan for how to do this, but I need a personal night. I need to play the game. I need to stop being this annoying outsider that nobody listens to. And I need your help. So if you accept, we'll do the imprinting ritual. And I promise I will not ask you to do anything that like compromises your honor or your morals or anything like that. And he's basically just like,
and then later he's like, I'll compromise my morals all on my own.
Well, so he's like, I want to get out of here. This is the only way I'm ever going to get out of here. I'll take a chance on this. And he accepts the imprinting. So what we have...
That's a good ABBA song.
That's what?
That's a good ABBA song.
Accepts the imprinting?
No. What's the one? Take a chance on me.
Oh, there you go.
And change your life.
I was like, wow, maybe I didn't know as much about Mamma Mia as I thought.
Is that from any? Is that in?
I have no idea. I don't know much about Mamma Mia, so you could tell me it's a weird thing about alchemic imprinting, and I'd believe you.
We'll just assume.
So what we have here is a sub-dom relationship, the contract, if you will, the 50 Shades of Grey, but not as creepy.
Well, and that is the proper way to have one of those relationships, is that both people come into it together, and one is like, I want to be a sub, and the other is like, I want to be a dom, and they go, hey, let's get together.
Yeah, like what are the things, what are the no-goes for you? What's the safe word? Like, we're negotiating all that stuff, and he accepts it. Consent is given to the imprinting, and only then does
they didn't have a safe word, though. I think that's a problem.
No, but I don't, I'll allow the romance, like, leniency, I guess. So that's what makes it better, is he fully agreed to this, knowing what he was getting into. And she does her very best to respect his boundaries and not ask him
too much sometimes.
Yeah.
I found it interesting that, like, and I think the author did this on purpose, but like there's a bunch of times where she's trying to do everything herself, even though she can just be like, "Hey, help me with this."
Mm-hmm. No, well, and she doesn't really know what she could do with him. She's just sort of trying to get him on her side because, and that's the other thing that makes this maybe not as weird is she knows that one day he will become the king of the homunculi, and when he does, her power won't affect him anymore. He'll be able to rebel against her if he chooses. And so she is trying to get him on her side. She's not trying to order him around.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the reason she doesn't ask him for help, but she doesn't want to push it because she knows like this guy gets out in the end. So that's why I think like when imprinting was initially mentioned and they showed the thing of like her older sister has like a harem of knights that service her every evening, and she's only keeping this new one around because he's very good at it. And I was like, oh my God, what are we getting into? Yeah, so that's where we're going. I didn't think I'd like it, but they made it okay. The sister is terrible. All the sisters are terrible. And I guess
there's something to be said there because like probably every single one, although near the end of the season 2 there's another new brother that they're like, hey, maybe Eve can do something, he's younger, maybe she can put him on the right path. But like every single one of the princes and princesses is an absolute piece of shit.
Well, and this is the other weird thing about this setup is so the emperor is a polygamist. He has many wives.
It's like 9 or something like that.
And so he has
like 18 kids.
Yeah, like dozen children at least. And they all have like various like ranks. Like I think she's what the what?
I don't think they're ranks. I think it's based on age.
Oh.
So Eve is the 7th princess.
Okay. And she was born to a commoner alchemist. That's why she's good at alchemy. And that's why she's not like them. Now, the other creepy thing about this whole scenario is everybody knows about the sex slave thing. And it's not only accepted, it's encouraged. Like, if your brothers and sisters find out that you're not stooping your sex slave, they're going to be like, okay, well, what's wrong with you?
I do think there's something weird there because now they don't feel that the homunculi are people, right?
Right.
And so there's nothing to be like, oh, it's cheating if you're having sex with one of the homunculi. But at the same time, they're just talking about it pretty openly. It's like if your brothers and sisters were just like, hey, did you use that dildo yet?
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, it's got a really good vibrate function. It's like, what?
Exactly. I was going to say, even if they were objects, this would still be weird.
Yeah.
And that's where I think, like, again, I'm going back to, like, bet this is really popular with a niche group of people. Because it's not terrible, but it's not normal. I love that is how they introduce some tension into the plot with, because people notice that Eve is not spending the night with her personal guard. They try to use that against him, saying he's not fulfilling all of his duties. They try to punish him for that when she's not around, and she saves him from that punishment and disciplines and blackmails the prince and princess involved in that. But then he has to start every Wednesday sleeping on her couch so that they can pretend.
Can we just... they missed the prime opportunity to just be like, oh, I don't need him all night because he's that good. We only need 20 minutes.
Oh, I'm really trying hard not to quote a Nicki Minaj lyric. I'll just say at the end of the lyric, he called her NyQuil.
Mm.
So, do with that what you will, listeners.
It's a very strange setup overall. I get the feeling there's a couple things in this series overall that I get the feeling that the author was like, oh, that's a good idea, I'll do that, but didn't think about the consequences or the implications the whole way through.
Yeah, I don't. I definitely don't think the author super cares about the logic of the world. I don't think that's what you're here for.
Yeah, that's true.
I think the author said, "This is a bucket. This is a bucket of my favorite things: Full Metal Alchemist, Subdom Kink, Pretty Boys, or Otome Isekai. Mix it all together, and I'm just gonna like this. It does feel a little bit like the literary equivalent of like taking a bunch of mismatched toys out of your toy box and creating like a narrative
Well,
around
I
how
mean, let's be completely fair. All of those things are Full Metal Alchemist.
that's true.
I mean, Ed and Winry, that's definitely.
Oh, I don't know about that.
What are you talking about? She beats him up all the time, and they're deeply in love.
I will give that they're deeply in love, but I think that's more like the childhood friend, tomboy girlfriend thing. I wouldn't call Ed and Winry a subdom, at least not outside of the dojinshi this person reads.
She just takes off his. Oh shit! What are they called? The parts.
Oh, the auto mail.
Automail, right?
Yeah.
She just takes those off of him, then he can't get away.
I'm surprised Automail has not made an appearance in this comic.
Yeah, and that was one thing I was wondering because the point where they were trying to punish Michaelis, and they were like, well, first of all, the princess is like, I think you should break his bone, and then they're going to cut his arm off. I'm like, that's different. But I was like, he could just have his arm cut off. Can't you like reattach it with magic, or like, do you have a fancy metal arm that you could use or something?
That would be intense. I'm glad they didn't cut his arm off. I don't know if I would have recovered from that because that's the sadomasochism part that I'm really not into. So the one there is an interesting thing this story does, and this is kind of a tangent, but I haven't seen it in a lot of Otome Isekai, and I've been picking on this one for being horny and fanficky. But there is a bit of like honest to God emotional intelligence in this where her younger sister is not as talented in alchemy. And she's kind of the brat. She wants all the attention. She doesn't want.
There's something to touch on there before we go down there because I'm a little confused about the alchemical abilities of everyone because at one point a lot of the nobles are like, oh, that's Eve. She's the next alchemist in the family. Because like the emperor is apparently a really good alchemist and then Eve is a really good alchemist. And they seem to imply that the rest of the princes and princesses can't do alchemy or are very bad at it.
I think
but then like every single one of them has to do that ritual to do the imprinting on their knight. And it's like, but that's alchemy. But also like, if you really can't do it, you get a piece of the philosopher's stone to use to like finish it off. And it's just like, I don't understand. can they all do it, or can they not? And there's a special thing to do the imprint. Like, what the heck?
I could be reading way too much into this, and maybe this is just like something the author absorbed through osmosis. But like, I figured there is a baseline level of alchemy required to even qualify to be emperor, and that's why it's so embarrassing that it takes the younger sister so long
Yeah.
to perform the ritual, because that means she's not going to ever be a candidate. And I'd compare that to like back when monarchs had to perform some essential function, like the pharaohs had to predict the floods. So you had to have some base level knowledge of astronomy to know when the seasons were changing, when it should happen, when the crop should be planted, and all that stuff. And if you were bad at it, everybody died.
Yeah.
And you weren't king anymore. But like I said, that could be reading way too much into it. We don't really have enough to know if the emperor just has a special interest in alchemy or if that's a requirement.
Yeah.
But
I think that I would go with that explanation of you have to have a baseline, which
because
means
they
that,
need
like,
to be able to create homunculi to keep the empire afloat. That's their military.
but it's also not clear how they're created because they're like test tube babies. And so is it like, what is the alchemical component that creates them? But yeah, we're not given enough information to know how good Bridget is at alchemy at this point.
I think she's worse than Eve, better than Rose.
Well, everybody's worse than Eve. The
Yeah.
Emperor is worse than Eve. Like we've been shown that she is significantly better at alchemy than everyone around her. Maybe not the sage.
Yeah, well, the sage seems to be like a once-in-a-lifetime genius that lives forever because they're so talented.
Although, to do the imprinting on Michaelis, she did have to use like 14 magic stones or something. Which I don't think the Emperor used. Which then makes me go, why didn't he use those? They're not secret. I mean, Eve's are secret, but like magic stones in general are not a secret. Like, why wouldn't he have just used some magic stones? Or is it embarrassing to have to use magic stones as the Emperor?
Yeah.
So, Rose is a complete failure, even though you have to have some ability of alchemy as an Imperial. But for some reason, Rose is never satisfied, even though people are constantly fawning over her and like she's what is it, the white rose of the imperial family or whatever.
Yeah, I don't really know why people like her.
She's the prettiest, even though like literally every single one of these people is immaculate.
Yeah, you couldn't really pick a prettiest. I mean, it wouldn't be Eve. She's presented more plain than most.
Yeah.
But the reason I mentioned Rose at all, she's not even really much of an antagonist. It quickly becomes Bridget. Is Rose imprints on this pretty silver-haired boy. The homunculi don't
You don't even
normally...
need to try.
what's his name? Sylvestrin?
Yeah. Sylvestian.
Sylvestian. Because it sounds like silver. So Sylvestian is, he's a very good warrior. He has long silver hair. That is incredibly rare. Almost all homunculi have black hair. And in fact, when their magical powers are taken away, their hair lightens. So it's very odd that Sylvestian could be a very powerful warrior and maintain his silver hair. She picks him for the novelty. But the thing that this comic does that I haven't seen in a lot of others is the relationship between Sylvestian and Michaelis. They're like roommates in the barracks, and they kind of become friends, and their friendship seems to be like as important to the story almost and his development as the homunculus king, like, and just this is just because my head is like super in Lord of the Rings from podcasting, but like there's almost like a little Aragorn Boromir thing going on there, where like, you know, Michaelis is the destined king, and Sylvestian is the one who spends the most time around the people, and eventually Sylvestian's kind of like showing him through example that he should care about the homunculi, and maybe he could have friends. Maybe the homunculi could have bonds.
Yeah.
And they eventually work together in the hunt that is in every Otome Isekai.
We do need to be clear, though, that Sylvestian is second male lead.
Yeah, kind of. I mean,
nothing's going to happen, but
Yeah.
like it's shown multiple times that Sylvestian is also into Eve.
well, he sure can't wind up with Rose.
No. Well, nobody can.
I do want to talk briefly about, you know, I said they didn't go too ham with the subdom thing, but like, I do want to talk briefly about the ball where everybody's personal guard has to wear like an open-necked blouse and a blindfold,
Yeah.
and they all look like they're from Interview with the Vampire, and it's really like sex party stuff. And I was
And
like,
then there's
oh my.
there's the pearl room where you go, and there's these little booths, and there's a
Yeah.
curtain, and it's got a soundproofing spell applied to it.
This this lady had some frustrations to work out when she wrote this.
Maybe that's why it's been so long since it's had an update. She got laid.
The source of tension's gone. I don't know what to do.
How do I write this now? I don't.
Or she finally got she imprinted someone and she's just been busy.
Same. I think it's interesting the way that they present all of the schemes, the back and forth between the princesses and Eve, where like all of the princes and princesses, at least the ones we've seen so far, that go against Eve are like idiots, except for Betty, Bridget, whatever. They call her Betty sometimes. But even when it's a back and forth with her, they show you as like, oh, there's this scheme going on, and she's smart, and she figures out what's going on here. But then like there's also still nothing that she can do because Eve's just so smart and brilliant.
Yeah. I there hasn't been a lot of tension around whether or not Eve will successfully ascend the political world. She's been doing that pretty effortlessly. The season 2, I guess, we could talk about the pacing a little here. Season 2 is primarily just the hunt, right?
Yeah, there's the beginning of it is basically the setup to that, and then there's a few chapters of the hunt, which is, I mean, it's a big deal. So, you know, major set piece and everything, and then the last couple chapters are just like political setup stuff.
Yeah, so the hunt reveals that there's an evil dragon spirit.
I was confused about that the first time I read this, and on reread it made more sense. But it's like, okay, there used to be an evil dragon that long ago they killed, and then the evil dragon's body generates mana stones, which they then mine.
Mm-hmm.
The dragon that shows up at the hunt is the spirit of that dragon that got killed. Because the first time I read it, I'm like, they're calling this dragon the same name as that dragon they said was dead. What's going? It's that dragon's spirit.
Yeah. And the dragon remembers him as the homunculus king. So like that dragon exists somehow like outside of time, or has memories outside of
That's
time.
what the sage said. I got the feeling that that wasn't necessarily the answer. But the sage was already talking to them about going back in time, and so it's like, oh, that's probably it.
And they're both starting to get memories of the previous life.
Both, you mean the sage and
No,
Michaelis?
Eve and Michaelis.
Well, Eve
Well, Eve
remembers the whole
obviously
thing.
remembers,
Yeah,
yeah. But Michaelis is starting to get memories. So it's like,
I think he didn't unlock any memories. They were specifically like, oh, the sage did a thing, and I can recall some emotions that I felt from the previous timeline.
yeah, he definitely knows he hates Rose. But yeah, it kind of ends unsatisfactorily in season two.
So the first season is 40 chapters, which is
Yeah.
like that's a normal season length. And then the second season is 18. And this is complete speculation, but I'm wondering if partway through the second season somebody got sick and they had to put it on hold because it didn't feel like a season end.
No.
Like it was a fairly upbeat final chapter for the season, and so like you can finagle it into a season end, but the season wasn't long enough, and it didn't feel like a season ender story beat. It was more like I've got set up to do this cool thing, and in the next oh no, we're not gonna.
Well, yeah, because it's like the first season kind of has like maybe like two or three intertwining conflicts that are resolved like one at a time. And then this starts to set that up, like first conflict, and then second conflict starts with the political stuff, and then the new character that has the dumbest name in the history of the world, Euclid Bjorn, and then season two over. Join us for season three. Many years in the future.
You're not kidding. As far as the information that I have goes, this is coming back in 2025,
Yeah.
and it hasn't had a chapter release for over 2 years, so it'll be a 3 year hiatus. Which, I mean, normally when stuff goes on hiatus that long, it doesn't come back.
Yeah, well, I mean, I only shout out to the Otome Isekai subreddit. That's where I found out it was coming back. And the comments on that seem to be like very shocked that this was coming back at all. I'm kind of with them. It's good, but I don't know if it's like I could believe that it got canceled or that they didn't want to keep going.
Yeah, I don't think it's a cancel kind of thing. It definitely seems like, and this happens with VTubers, and it happens with mangaka, and like, but people get sick and stuff goes on hold. And so, we're in the Western world, that doesn't happen so much because a lot of the media that gets created is done by large teams. And so if you have one person in that team that gets sick, it's not going to stop. Like short of like the creative head of a project getting sick. But even then, they might like do it very short time. So the team keeps going and they're just like doing check-ins every once in a while or something. But with the nature of so much of this Eastern media, I'll say, being like a one-person show kind of thing, or one or two people, if that person gets sick, well, guess what? You got to wait. That happened with Ruri Dragon. If anybody listening to this knows about Ruri Dragon, that's a Shonen Jump series that released, I think it was only 4 chapters before the mangaka got sick and then was away for 2 years. And then it came back, and now it's wildly popular. So could be a similar situation. There was one, as I mentioned before, I had a couple notes on this one, which normally doesn't happen, but like I said, as I was rereading it, there are a couple things where I was like, oh, I want to make sure I mention that, write this down. In the second season, when they are going on the Monster Hunt tournament expedition thing on that island, they make it a point to talk about how Eve needs to collect some monster materials.
Oh yeah, like the
And so,
slimes and the
yeah, and so Michaelis is going through and like fighting specific monsters so he can like get material for her. And they talk about the specific materials that she needs and why she needs them. And she's like, yeah, I need this stuff because I'm trying to make a heart medicine, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they mentioned like right before that, and this is like one of those kind of funny blush situations, right? That those materials are used to increase vigor in the bedroom. And I read that, I went, she's inventing Viagra.
I know that was I got that. Yeah, that was somebody who had just like the guy who writes JoJo does that a lot, where there's like you can tell he just read a fact about something,
Yeah.
and he's like, that has to go in the manga, even
Right.
though there's no reason for it. And you could tell that person was just like, they discovered Viagra while trying to make heart medicine. Like, I gotta put that in my Full Metal Alchemist BDSM fanfic.
I did like how they tied that through, though, because she's also trying to create artificial organs and specifically an artificial heart. Because apparently in this empire, heart disease is the biggest problem.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's funny because she's like, most people die of heart disease, and I was like, I think that's true today, but in medieval times, I don't think most people lived long enough to get heart disease.
Well, maybe all of the rest of their healthcare is really good, and so they also have, longer lives, and
It's just a bunch
heart
of
disease happens to be a
Dr.
thing.
Marcos with their philosopher stones healing.
Well, yeah, let's. Yeah, I don't think there's. Yeah, as you said, it's not super long. For anyone who's listening to this for a recommendation, I reread this yesterday, the entire thing. It's only 58 chapters, so. And I took plenty of breaks all day long. It wasn't even like difficult.
No, it's an easy read, and it does catch you. Like, it's a little wonky at the beginning, but well, I'll talk about that when I talk about recommendation.
All right. Well, before we get into the rubric, we do need to decide if this is going to be the romance version or not.
I think so. I think it has to.
I was going back and forth on that a little bit because on the one hand, like, it's definitely presented as a romance, but on the other hand, up until the end of season 2, they're not really romancing each other at all. I mean, there's definitely some tension there and everything, and there's a bunch of misunderstandings and blushing and everything, but it's also like neither of them is actively pursuing the other.
I don't think this is a traditional romance, but I do think with that submissive dominant angle, I do think that this relationship and the dynamics of it are the focus, and I do think it is meant to. I can't think of a better word than like titillate. I think it's
I
meant.
think that's fair.
Yeah, I do.
Stimulating.
Yes, that's probably better.
I think the ongoing seasons will definitely we'll definitely see a lot of romance as it goes on. I think they're very close to a point where they are going to have to confront that to each other.
I was going to say, usually, like, part of the disappointing thing with the short season 2 is usually in shoujo stuff and otome isekai versus, say, shonen romance, they get to the point faster. Like, by the end of season 2 in most of these series, like, it is known that feelings exist. There's
a lot of times the season 2 ender is the big, like, oh, we're gonna get together. We've confessed to each other, and then you get, you move on to season 3, and like now we have to confront the actual big problems and deal with that while we're also getting closer.
And that's honestly one of the things I like about shoujo and otome isekai and the stuff that's more targeted towards women is they spend a little bit of time in the relationship, where it seems like in shonen stuff, the relationship's the reward. You got the girl, bye.
Yeah, no, and it's always at the end, and it's always, I mean, short of literal slice of life stuff. Yeah, shonen, more action series and stuff like that. You get to the end. I think you probably already said it perfectly. Is like the relationship is the reward at the end.
Yeah, it's all about the chase, whereas the stuff targeted at women is more about like the chase and how do we live together. Like, I think that's rewarding, and that's the part I always miss about shonen stuff. I want that part, so that's why it was kind of disappointing in season 2, because I was really looking forward to progress on that front.
Yeah.
And we didn't get a ton.
Well, if we get to do a follow-up on this series in a couple years, I imagine that we'll see that, like, midway through season 3, they get together, and we'll be like, that was supposed to be the end of season 2, wasn't it?
Yep. I think you're right.
All right, so time to rubric. As always, you can join us in rubricking. We have an interactive rubric out on our website. You can find that at animepodcastreincarnation.com. Link for the rubrics up at the top. So as we go through this, you can either just read along if you want to know what the various, what would we call them, descriptions for each point value are, or if you want to do it yourself. All right, so we are going to kick this off, as always, with content and ideas. Do you have strong feelings on this one way or another?
I think I'll err on the side of generous, since there's not a lot to go on yet. I'll say a 4.
4 was what I was going to go with as well. This is, while I've said a bunch of different tropes that happen as we've been going over this, I think the way they do those tropes and the mix of them that they're doing is fairly unique.
It's fanficky. Like I say, it definitely feels like that bucket of favorite things that I smashed together, but it has a voice, it has a perspective, and you can see how those things fit together for this person. So I think, and there is enough original in the plot. I think the world building is probably the least original part of it, but the plot itself is pretty okay.
Yeah.
And I think it has the potential to be pretty good.
What do you think would bump this up to a 5?
What would bump it up to a 5 is maybe some big twist. Like, I go back to Rose was pregnant with a homunculus child in the beginning. And if there is some big twist that is not from the Otome Isekai or Fullmetal Alchemist fandoms, if there's some big original idea that ties into the major conflict, I think that could bump me up.
What if in that alternate future because Michaelis like gave his life maybe to turn back time, Rosie is the only one left, and she's still pregnant with this kid, right? And so she has the kid, and it is basically a monster. It's normal looking. It's probably actually like really good looking, but it's a monster in that it's like a hybrid of homunculus and human. And because Rosie's insane, she raises it, and it's insane, and then it uses its amazing mutant powers to use the other half of the Philosopher's Stone power to send itself back in time, and it becomes like a Demon King sort of threat and is the actual big bad of the series.
That could work for me. And I think that would be a clever tying up of it uses half of the Philosopher's Stone, which means we've got one more shot. So I do like that. That could something like that could definitely increase this for me.
Yeah. All right. Well, you mentioned before you've got some thoughts on pacing and structure.
Honestly, like, I don't know how to feel about this. I think I'm going to say a 3.
Oh, really?
It's a 4, but like, it's a 4 if we accept the theory that season 2 is caused by extenuating circumstances.
That's where I'm at. I'm giving it a 4 because even though I don't have all the information, it really feels like somebody got sick and they had to just like cut this off. Now, I don't know why they didn't just not call it the end of season 2 and just be like,
Hiatus.
sorry, it's on hiatus. I would have. I feel like I'd be more forgiving. I'm giving it a 4 anyway, but I'd probably be more inclined for a 4 if they had done that. Because as it stands right now, it looks like it's just a poorly paced second season.
Yeah, I'll give it a 4. Where I'll tell you,
you don't have to.
No, I mean, I want to be generous with this because I have so little to go on. So I want to err on the side of they're not going to screw it up. But if it continues to be to trickle out in the way, like if season 3 is 8 chapters, nah, it's back down.
Yeah,
that might be down to a 2.
I will say, like, the first season I thought was pretty well paced. There wasn't really anything where I felt like they went too fast or too slow. And the issue with the pacing in season 2 is almost directly related to the fact that it was so short. The actual story beats that happen in there had enough time to breathe, but also didn't drag on. The bit with the singer didn't feel rushed or too short. The monster hunting thing didn't feel too rushed or too short. There was a really good part where there was this one noble from the first season that there was a weird thing that happened with him at the party, and he showed up, and they gave like a nice little recap of like, hey, you remember this that happened before? Well, that's this guy and what's going on. And so there was a good connection there that I think will, obviously something's going to happen, or else like, why do we keep going back to this guy, right? Mm-hmm. If that's not a Chekhov's noble, then that would definitely take the one of these is going to go down to a 3.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of side characters.
I actually like the characters a lot more than I thought I would. I actually almost want to give a 5.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I'll tell you why. And maybe it's I feel like that's too generous for what it is, but like there's just little touches with the characters that I really liked the male friendship depicted in this. That is usually not something you see in Otome Isekai. Like you do see a lot of guys who already have a best friend and they've already been through a lot together.
Mm.
And so they have that kind of like bro thing going on. You don't see it develop very often, like from nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that. And I like that you're seeing Michaelis develop from multiple angles. You're seeing him develop romantically with her. You're seeing him develop more as just a normal person with the homunculi and the people he works with. I like her dynamic with her maid. That moment where they kind of have to swap roles is
Yeah.
fun. The singer is fun. Even the emperor is kind of interesting in that he's not like he doesn't seem to be like a blanket monster, even though he's the slave driving kind of, he was born into this system too, presumably.
Yeah.
And when she suggests things, he's not like, oh, well, that would make the homunculus, that would make their lives better, so we can't do that.
Right.
He responds to reasonable arguments, and I think that's interesting. And I even think Bridget has this little thing where when she's very angry, she makes potpourri.
Yeah.
She like strangles flowers in a bowl of wine, and like that's just like you didn't have to give her something like that. You didn't have to have her do anything. That's such just
Yeah.
a quirk.
Yeah, a lot of the bad people in the series don't feel like just caricatures of evil. It's like, yeah, they're terrible people and a lot of them are idiots, but like they're basically normal rich people. Like,
Yeah, and again, it's like 50 chapters. This could go in any direction, but and I know that's not a lot to hang your hat on. Like if and it's kind of like there's a genre curve here. Like does this compare to like a character study Oscar winning movie? No. The writing is obviously not on that level. But compared to other Otome Isekai, I do think there's a much clearer idea of who these people are in the author's head than there is in some Otome Isekai. I think Otome Isekai and Isekai in general tends to focus a lot on the protagonist, and then the other characters exist specifically in relation to the protagonist.
yeah.
Where I feel like these characters have a life outside of their protagonist.
Yeah.
So I'm going with a 5. It's a rare it's a rare gift for me.
So I'm gonna stick with a 4. I think you make a lot of good points there, and I think based on all of that, I think 5 is fair. I'm not gonna go up to a 5 because I feel a bit teased
That's fair.
because we do have a lot of interesting characters that we get these little tidbits of, but then like I don't think enough of them are explored further. Like the her lady in waiting, the what's her name? Sedella.
Yeah.
She's out there, and you see these interactions that she has with Eve, and you go, oh, this is an interesting character. Like, why are they so close? Like, what's the dynamic here? What's her background? She's she's obviously like a noble. She's a lady in waiting, but like, what's the dynamic here? But then you don't get any backstory to that. You get the interactions with them present day, but it's not explored at all. And I think that sort of happens with a lot of these side characters. You get the hint of, like you said, the author knows what's going on. The author has an idea of how this stuff is working, but it's not presented to us. And so,
Yeah,
I think it's a good thing. We want more of them, right? But like, you got to give it to us.
Yeah, it really did. It depends on what they write in the future.
Yeah. So yeah, I think 5 is fair. And this is definitely a category where in the future I could definitely go up to a 5. But right now, I'm gonna temper it with a 4. Moving on to romance. I feel like this is also one where we can sort of see where it's going.
Mm-hmm.
We get these hints of it, but it's like we didn't get there yet.
Yeah, I'm between a 3 and a 4 on it, which is honestly higher than I thought I'd be.
What takes it down to a 3 to you?
What takes it down to a 3 for me right now is he's still a little too puppy doggy for me.
Mm.
And
That's
obviously
what they're into.
I know. And I don't like what I'm surprised by is I don't actually have a huge problem with the way that's portrayed in this. Like as long as he knew the deal and agreed to it, I think it's okay.
He's a puppy dog, but it's not gross.
Yeah. And I think it's a 3 for me right now, but could go up to a 4 because it's just right now there's not a lot to work with. They haven't. I'm kind of where you were with the characters, where like you could get there, but we're not there yet. Like I would say, like the fail to fully engage me is I'm not personally. It could be a personal thing. I'll acknowledge that for anybody who's really into this ship. I'll acknowledge that I'm not super into that submissive angle. And maybe part of the submissive angle is that it's a little more drawn out. There's a little more like teasing, like you said.
I don't think that the drawn out nature of it is from the submissive stuff, though.
No.
I think it's still doing that manhwa trope of we're not gonna express to each other how we're really feeling. Because what if they think differently, even though they constantly make eyes at me and it's obvious to everyone around us. But what if that's not what they want? I don't want to hurt our existing relationship. But it's like, oh my God. Okay.
I feel like I'm not fully engaged yet because they're not fully engaged yet.
Yeah. So yeah, could go up. Probably not gonna get to a 5 on this one ever.
Not for me.
But I think it could solidly hit a 4 if we see some good development in future seasons.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So I'm also going with a 3 on this. Now, somewhere where this can gain some points, art competency.
It's okay. I wasn't like blown
Really?
away.
I think this is high 4 territory. Because it's not one of those like stellar series where you're like, I've never seen anything like this before. This is exceedingly beautiful. Like, read it just because of how beautiful it is. But it's also at the top of the standard style.
Okay, I could go there. I'll say it's a yeah.
I mean, that's how we've rated some past stuff where it's like, yeah, this is obviously a professional. They know what they're doing. They're putting in the work. There's very few parts where you might go, oh, they screwed up here or there. Like, it's almost immaculate.
I'll give it that. There's no. It's professional for sure.
Yeah.
It's. My only criticism is it's just generic webtoon.
Right. Yeah,
But
to get into the 5, it needs to do something new and interesting. Like we saw with Mother's Contract Marriage, it's like if you're gonna put in the work to make this not look like everything else, that's the kind of thing that elevates you to a 5. But if you make it look like everything else, but better than everything else, you can sit at the top of the 4.
yeah, I give it that.
For visual effects and stylistic flourish, I'm also gonna go with a 4. I was actually on the edge of giving this a 5.
Really?
Rereading this, I definitely took notice of the fact that they fill all of the space. They spend a lot of time on lighting and shadow. The magic effects that they do, they spend a lot of time with that. Like, I'm honestly not sure what would push this over the edge to a 5.
I could go for a 4. I'm not feeling a 5 yet. I could go to a 4. I don't know if there's been. I think there's opportunities to earn a 5, but like I wasn't like super duper impressed with the Monster Hunt stuff.
Yeah, that one was one where
That's an opportunity for it that you didn't do much with it.
Yeah, and I think maybe another thing that would push it over the edge to a 5 would probably be taking some more risks in terms of like shot composition and stuff like that.
They do some interesting. The one that stands out to me is when he was about to get his arm cut off and she floats down through the barrier.
Yeah, but they didn't really. I mean,
There was an
just
angle
like,
that they had to hand draw that.
yeah, but it was also like, they didn't. They could have done maybe like a vertical spread.
Yeah,
Where you can get sort of like
you can see
she's
her
coming in
floats.
and he's there and they're like juxtaposed to it. What they did wasn't bad, obviously, and it looked really good. But like you could have elevated that a bit more with an interesting camera pan or something like that. So it's just stuff like that. This is, I'd call this a 4.9 if that was something that we did. So
I mean, if it's that high, maybe you should go to a 5. I'm going to stay at a 4.
I can't. I don't think I can push it over just yet. But they've taken a nice long hiatus. Maybe they've been practicing in their time off. So maybe
Technology has evolved since then.
maybe we'll see some new and interesting things in the next seasons that'll easily push it over for me. So, well, now obviously we have to talk about the most important category here, which is personal preference.
Surprised to say it's a 4.
Okay. Why is that surprising?
Imprint. You use the word imprint in a romance, and I am immediately out.
It definitely did a good job of throwing up all these red flags and then just cutting them down.
Yeah, I think this is definitely like maybe I want to say especially for young writers, but God knows like people don't learn. This is obviously a person who thought about how to do this right.
Mm-hmm.
And I was pleasantly surprised at the amount of thought that was put into setting up a situation that is so often just scummy.
Okay.
And making it something I could root for. Like I thought probably the highest I was going to go was a 3, but like I was actually able to no longer be distracted by the romance after a certain point. you don't see a lot of, maybe, well, I mean, this could be my bias, I guess. I don't know if there are a lot of otome isekai with a highly submissive male lead.
I can't think like there's plenty of situations where the male lead is submissive in a moment or even multiple times, but I can't think of another one where like the whole premise is that he's
That is the
submissive the whole time.
relationship dynamic.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that is interesting, and I bet there are a lot of people out there who are into that. And obviously, I'm not personally looking for a submissive male in my love life, but
Yeah.
I can get why people like it. And yeah, it was something I could root for. Like I it's not a romance I like self-insert into, but it is a romance I can empathize with, I guess. I can understand why they want this, and I can understand how it's fulfilling for them, and you can root for their happiness, and you can then get past that and get more involved in like the political aspects of the story and the
Right.
intrigue and drama. So yeah, I wound up liking it a lot more than I thought I would. I wound up being surprised. I was like not relieved when I got to chapter 58 or whatever. I was like, oh wow, there really isn't another one. Huh.
I mean, that's definitely a good point. That's sort of leads into my thoughts on this. I'm also going with a 4, and a lot of that when I do personal preference, I generally try not to think about the analysis of it a whole lot and go more off of
Gut check.
what are my feelings on it, and that is a big part of it. I didn't have any trouble reading through this again. I was interested in it again. I got caught up in it. When I got to the end, I was like, oh, okay, well, we're just done. I sort of wanted more of that. At the same time, it's not going up to a 5 for me because there was very little there were very few times in the past 2 years since I read this the first time where I went, oh, when is Revolutionary Princess Eve going to come back? Now, I wanted to, I'm interested in it, but it wasn't taking up any of my thought processes, you know? Like, there are other series where when it doesn't come out week to week, I'm like, what's going on? Where is it? I need this. It's time to flip the script is one of those where I'm like, why isn't it out this week? What's going on?
Yeah.
So yeah. So while I really do enjoy this and I want it to come back and I want to read more of it, it's not a top level one. So yeah, solid 4. So who are we going to recommend this to?
So I think I'm between a 3 and a 4. And I'll tell you, on one hand, on the 4 side, I was surprised by it. I think other people this might not necessarily be their ideal romantic situation might also be surprised by it. On the other hand, there is the practicality of I don't trust this will ever be finished. And in that case, I like what's out right now does not stand on its own.
Right. Yeah. There's not enough of it where you could go, well, it's not going to end, but the place where it stopped is enough for a story.
Yeah. Like, I think, to some extent, I think, like, going back to books, A Song of Ice and Fire by George R. R. Martin, I actually think that is worth reading, even if he never finishes it. But this isn't that. I know it's going to get a season 3, I guess. Season 3, unless it is like 60 chapters long, would not be enough to end it.
Mm.
So if they're going to do another like 40 chapter season 3, then they're going to need a season 4. And if it took them 2 years to get a season 3, so I guess my thing is I recommend it with an asterisk.
Well, let's be fair. From season 1 to 2, it was not a very long time.
I'll give it a 4 with an asterisk.
I think that's fair. I have no means to put an asterisk on it, but
You just have to trust me as you listen
Yeah.
to this.
I'm also going with a 4 for this. I don't really think that non-genre fans would latch on to anything here.
No, you
It's
gotta
an
be.
interesting story, but there's too much in here that is manhwa
I think you got to
romance
read a lot of
specific.
romance to. You got to be. This isn't how you want to be introduced to some of the concepts.
Right.
Yeah, you got to be a little bit of the, a little bit in the scene for this one.
Yeah. But for genre fans, I think it's worth checking out. It's possible people will be disappointed, but I think what is there is enough to get you hooked and make you want the next season to happen. So
I can definitely see it being a little polarizing. Like, I think the people who like it are going to really like it, and I think the people who don't like it are probably going to get like 3 chapters and put it down.
yeah,
So if what you've heard so far intrigues you in any way, shape, or form, the alchemy stuff, the submissive male lead stuff, like, then yeah, you probably like it. And if that sounds boring or not your thing, might be not your thing.
yeah. All right. Well, that's the rubric. Let's see. I ended up at 77, which is, I'd say, 8 out of 10.
Beat
It's
you.
pretty close. Hmm?
I'm at 80.
Yeah, slightly over. Also 8 out of 10. Can't round that one up. So yeah, I think the reviews on this are pretty fair. As always, people are normally either more overzealous or, well, I guess overzealous, one way or the other.
I think it's an
Either
underserved
higher or
market.
lower.
I think maybe
Yeah.
they're happy to have happy to have something that they can latch onto.
But yeah, I mean, 8 out of 10. That's pretty solid and definitely up there in terms of quality. So good stuff. All right. Well, now, as always, it's time to talk about what we're going to do next time. So we've got 2 series that are coming over from previous polls. People have consistently rejected. um, I Shall Master This Family. Again, one of my absolute favorites of all time. And a manga, May I Ask One Final Thing. I think it's time for our third pick. We're going to put on The Villainess Lives Again.
Oh my god! I I have a confession. I accidentally started reading that one time.
Accidentally. I told you to start it.
Yeah, well, I started it like long ago because I got it confused with another title. So, no, because you told me to start it, and I went to Bato, and I was like, I'm already on like chapter 20. What the hell?
Well, it's probably good, and you should probably read it before we get the next one picked anyway, because The Villainess Lives Again just released chapter 200.
Jesus.
I'll tell everybody ahead of time, I'm not rereading this one. I really like this series.
I only made it to
But-
the Alabasta arc, and Villainous Lives Again.
It's honestly, it's really dense. There's a lot of stuff going on. I'm not going to reread it. I like it so far. I hope people pick it at some point, not necessarily this time. but there's a lot going on. So, but yeah, I think that'll be a good one. You might want to bribe people to not pick it this time, so you can get caught up. You're definitely going to need the whole time that we have between these to
Man.
get
Long
through
as
it.
long as CrowdStrike keeps pushing these updates, I'll have plenty of time to read at work.
As always, for the poll for picking our next series, that will be up on Patreon, and every tier gets to vote on that. So make sure you go and check that out, and you get to pick. You get to be part of the process. It's interactive. This is an interactive podcast. Well, as always, I want to thank everybody for listening. This was a fun one to do. Good series. It's fun to talk about. So before we go, I want to, as always, thank our partner Sugoi Mart. Sugoi Mart's a retailer of Japanese snacks, drinks, toys, and merch. And they got a lot of cool stuff you can't get outside of Japan. Our listeners can use the link in the description or use code APR15 at checkout to get 15% off their first order. And we want to hear from people. So make sure you come join us on social media. And you know what? Tell us if there's a series you want us to cover. We've done a couple suggested series already, and we're obviously open to that. Bonus points if you're a patron. Probably. I don't know. Well, you can find
us at 20. We'll definitely cover it.
Our highest tier isn't 20, but I think you can just pick an amount that you want to give also. So yeah, if someone's into that. You can find all of our social media links on our website, animepodcasterreincarnation.com, where you can also leave comments on these podcast episodes. Or you can join us on Discord and chat about the episodes. We also chat about all kinds of fun stuff, so be sure to check that out. As I mentioned, we've got a Patreon. Our supporters get perks like getting to vote on these series, which I just covered, as well as getting the high-quality stereo version of the podcast early, except for this episode, because we're recording it late, and also I have something to do this afternoon, so this one's going to come out like 5 minutes before it actually releases. So sorry about that. But I did release an episode of Shonen Jumping the Gun on Friday ahead of this to make up for that. And in case you are a Shonen Jumping the Gun fan, I will reiterate that we are moving those releases to every Thursday now. So you get Shonen Jumping the Gun goodness every week. In addition to those perks, we also have bonus episodes that come out from time to time. We've had, like 10 of them now or something like that. And all of the tiers get access to the bonus episodes. So make sure you jump on there and check that out. And we love to hear what perks people would like. So you can come on the Discord and let us know, or, leave a comment on one of the podcast episodes or something. In addition to all of those great patron perks, we also do shout-outs for our patrons. So at our Reincarnator tier, we've got Moon and Cake Dwarf. At our Merchant tier, we've got Kill Hour. And last, and definitely not least, at our Commoner tier, we've got Rena. Thank you so much to all our patrons. And don't forget to check out our regular podcast, That Time I Got Reincarnated in the Same World as an Anime Podcaster. In addition to that, we've got Shonen Jumping the Gun, like I said. We've also got Baka Banashi, which is just a random one that we do. And in the near future, we've got some other stuff coming up. So make sure that you're subscribed if you're not, because we've got a lot of good content. Too much, some people would say. And as always, if you can't get enough of Ben talking about things that he reads, you can check out his other podcast, words about books. You guys just wrapped up The Hobbit on your Talking About Tolkien series.
We did. The whole Hobbit is covered. We did a chapter-by-chapter review with some analysis and some inspirations. I thought it was pretty good, if I can say that about my own work.
Definitely a lot of information in there that I hadn't heard before.
It was a different sort of podcast, so people seem to have liked it. If you do like it, let me know, because that was a risk. Also, the reason we're recording this late, I'm going to be a guest on another podcast that was recording yesterday for some time. If anybody's interested, I'm not sure when it's coming out, but I'll be on Uncited, the internet's least reliable English lit podcast.
Nice.
Making up a story in real time. It was a disaster. So look forward to that.
You were on Unsighted before, right?
Yeah, I was on Uncited. For Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah, I was gonna say that wasn't a make up a story one. That was an actual.
It's covering the Telltale Heart. I have personally walked on Edgar Allan Poe's grave. So I'm a little bit of an authority on it.
I know what the ground above him feels like.
Dude, it's in Baltimore. You can check it out. You can just walk in. It's really cool.
Well, once again, thanks for listening. We hope you had a good time, because we did. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go blaze some fat manhwa rips. All right. Recording started. Anything you say now may end up in the bloopers.
I'll try not to Tenacious D this.
I hope you got through this whole thing.
I did.
It's very short.
Yeah.
I reread it yesterday.
From start to finish.
Yeah. And I was sitting here going through it, and I was like, is this right? The second season's only 18 chapters.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Did something happen here? Like,
I looked it up. Apparently it's coming back.
Yeah, it was only 18 chapters, and then it was gone. for however long it's been.
Over 2 years.
Yeah, and I think it's supposed to only be back sometime early next year.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, what happened here? I was trying to wait as long as possible to start my coffee because I just brushed my teeth.
Yeah.
I think I'm still a couple minutes off. It's Evan Rose, right?
Oh man, the names in this. I think it's like Evian Rose.
Oh yeah, I see that. Evian Rose. Then let's shorten that to Eve. Not Evie or Evie.
Yeah.
Or Rose. How about Rose? Oh, but we can't shorten it to Rose because that other princess is the White Rose of the Empire or whatever.
I'm still like in shock from Euclid Bjorn Handelmaid or whatever.
Hadelamid?
Hadelamid. I don't often go with the my culture is not your costume argument, but like it's weird to be on this side of it.
Do you think it's I think it's Hadelamid.
It may well be, but like none of these names are all just like they sound European to somebody who's not from that area of the world.
All right. Well, at least I know how to pronounce homunculi.
Thank you, Full Metal Alchemist.
Evian Rose.
Or maybe they said it Evian Rose, and that's why she's Eve.
That would make sense.
But they would be wrong.
Yeah. Evian Rose. Yeah, I'm going to do that. That makes more sense. Just because it's wrong doesn't mean that I want to be right. I can't read it any other way. There's an A in there. What else is it supposed to be?
The Empire. Gonna be a lot of the royal family. Gonna go torch a fat manhwa dab.